Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. Council is very appreciative to have Pastor Derek Holmes, who's the lead pastor at Second Baptist Church, here to pray with us. Welcome. Thank you, Pastor, for being here.
Thank you. Good evening. Let us pray. Eternal God, our Creator, God of justice, God of righteousness, Lord, we thank you on tonight for the privilege of leadership, for the privilege of service. As community and leaders, we are gathered in this space to reason together, to share ideas and insight with the intent of making this city better. Lord, we invite your divine presence into these proceedings. Allow your Holy Spirit to fill this hall. Allow your Spirit to speak to the minds and hearts of our local leadership, those elected by people, but ultimately chosen by you to lead. God, bless their discernment and their decisioning. God, let most of our energy be directed to the least of these. And Lord, may all that is done and said tonight point towards your will being done on earth as it is in heaven. For we ask it now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown, Dorrance, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden. Any person who takes any actions to obstruct or interfere with the conduct of tonight's meeting may be charged with disturbing a lawful meeting pursuant to Columbus City Code 2317.12. Any person who enters those areas of City Council chambers reserved for city officials or invited guests may be charged with criminal trespass pursuant to Columbus City Code 2311.21.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorrance, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
This week's communications received by the city clerk's office are listed on the agenda and will be published in the city bulletin. Are there any additional communications?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now go to council members for resolutions, starting with President Pro Tem. Councilmember Brown. Speeding through. Councilmember Dorrance.
Slowing it down.
Yeah.
No resolution tonight. Just want to announce and invite folks to the Public Utilities Committee hearing on the proposed rate adjustments for the year 2020. The hearing will take place this Thursday here in council chambers at 5 p.m. and will also be broadcast live on CTV and made available on the city YouTube channel after the event. So if folks want to come out for that, they're welcome to. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Favor.
Thank you, President Harden. Tonight I have Resolution 3015X-2009 to recognize and celebrate Bobby Floyd, one of our city's premier musicians. I would like to invite Mr. Bobby Floyd to the podium as I prepare just a few words in his honor. Mr. Floyd has performed for decades around the country and the world, is celebrated for his talent as a pianist and particularly an artist of the Hammond organ, an instrument with a unique sound that comes to life under his talented hands. The Greater Columbus Arts Council presented Bobby Floyd with the prestigious Raymond J. Hanley Award in recognition of his ongoing contributions to the artistic and cultural vibrancy of the city of Columbus. Bobby Floyd is a feature artist in GCAC's Art Makes Columbus, Columbus Makes Art campaign, telling the story of the amazing and passionate creative artists who all have made Columbus their home. Mr. Floyd represents the best of what music, art, and creativity means to our lives, and his talents contribute immeasurably to Columbus as a unique community where people want to live, work, and play. We at City Council are proud to recognize you and thank you for your contributions to Columbus. Mr. Floyd, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Shaylon and Shannon, Mr. Harden, and City Council. I'm very appreciative. I'm very happy to be a part of the Columbus musical scene. So thank you. I'm not a talker. I'm so used to sitting behind a piano, not behind a podium. But thank you. There's only one comment I'd like to make. Columbus is a great place for musicians. There are some of the best musicians in the world. And believe me, I've played all over the world with different people, Ray Charles. I've sat in the chair of Count Basie with the Count Basie Orchestra for 6 years. Been around the world several times and played with some of the best musicians. But I am so very proud to say that some of the best musicians are right here in our backyard. So anything you can do to support musicians and the arts in Columbus, I would greatly appreciate it if you continue doing it. Thank you very much. Thanks to the Tom Katzmoyer of the Greater Columbus Arts Council. And thanks to, I wrote her name right here. I'm nervous. Jamie Goldstein for Columbus Makes Art for the award that they gave me. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Congratulations. Thank you.
Well, seeing none, I would move for adoption.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Adopted.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Remy.
Thank you very much, Council President Harden. I'd like to invite Joe Nardoni, Kristen Easterday, Shanette Griffin, and Betsy Taylor from the Columbus Regional Airport Authority to the podium as I introduce ordinance number 316X 2019 to recognize and congratulate the Columbus Regional Airport Authority on partnering with domestic airlines to increase access to direct flights from Columbus to cities within the West Coast region. Nonstop flights are important economic development tools that bring more jobs, more visitors, and more prosperity to the Columbus region, all while saving time. On average, these nonstop round-trip flights save up to 6 hours of travel time, a significant savings for the traveler and the organization they represent. New nonstop service to San Francisco, Seattle, and Salt Lake City on United Airlines, Alaska Airlines, and Delta Airlines, respectively, launched throughout the course of 2019. If we, as private citizens, local businesses, and government entities support these new flights, we will secure them for the long term and also attract new opportunities. Recently, our Columbus City Auditor, Megan Kilgore, has approved amending the city's travel policy to allow the use of direct flights to improve both time and economic efficiency among the city's workforce, saving the city money. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Columbus to recognize and congratulate the Columbus Regional Airport Authority on partnering with domestic airlines to increase access to direct flights from Columbus to cities within the West Coast region. I would like to thank Auditor Kilgore for her leadership, as well as the Office of the City Auditor for their work on amending the city's travel policy. I'll now turn the floor over to you, Madam Auditor, for any comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Remy. Just a quick note, the economic importance of direct flights, twofold. One, of course, for the greater good of the Regional Airport Authority, but also for the expediency of our workers. And as city leadership is required to travel, it certainly makes sense for us to do so as efficiently as possible with good economics in mind. So this was an easy decision, and the Airport Authority deserves a lot of credit for their work on this as well.
Thank you very much. Joe, the floor is yours.
Chairman Remy, thank you so much for all of your work on this. President Harden and council members, we've gotten great support from you. Thank you so much. I could say thank you 100 times and it wouldn't be enough. I'm pleased here to be with Shanetta Griffin, who's our Chief Commercial Officer, Betsy Taylor, make sure I get your title right here, Betsy, Airline Business Development, and of course, everybody knows Kristen in town. You've said it all, Chairman Remy. We're just here to say thank you, and we also want to thank Auditor Kilgore for her assistance. Thank you all for your help.
So very excited to have you in town. Now it's about a year now?
Almost two.
Almost two.
Chairman.
See, time flies. But certainly appreciate your leadership, and you've got just a phenomenal team working on, improving our direct flight status. And I know that it takes a lot of lobbying, Kristen would, throughout the city to make sure that people are committed to those flights. But as we grow and as fast as we're growing, these flights are imperative for future economic development growth. And so we really thank you for your leadership, all of you, and look forward to many more to come, especially if we can get a couple from Europe, that sort of thing. So, but anyway, I will ask if there's any other questions or comments from my colleagues. Councilmember Brown?
Thank you, Chairman Remy. Joe, can you tell us, there's a lot of construction going on out at the airport. Why don't you just bring us briefly up to speed on what's really happening now?
So, thank you, Councilman. One of the things that we're working on right now is a consolidated rental car facility, which will free up some parking spaces in our deck, which will make everybody happy. But it's about a $125 million project, so all the car rentals will be together there. We're also doing some things with trying to clean up the roads, and we're also, I have great news to share. We had our best quarter ever in cleanliness for the airport, so we're working on a whole bunch of things. We have an escalator down, so we'll see that, and again, our staff, these are the folks that deserve the credit, not me, but our staff is doing an exceptional job.
Thank you, and as Councilman Remy already commented, it's been 2 years. When we first met, and you talked about the adjustment for you and your family to Columbus. You want to speak a little bit to that?
I say go Bucks a lot. I'm a Michigan State Spartan, but I will be wearing a Buckeye shirt in a couple of weeks. It's been I cannot tell you how wonderful this town has been to me. People are just incredible. I'm very blessed to be in your community, in this community.
And we appreciate you making this your home. Thank you very much for what you've done at the airport so far.
Thank you, Councilman.
Okay, take care.
Any other questions or comments? If seeing none, I will move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Adopted.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you very much, Council President Harden. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Tyson. All right. Are there any additional comments from the City Auditor, Treasurer's Office, City Attorney's Office? Don't see anybody from the Area Commission. So are there any requests by members of council for removal of an ordinance or resolution from the consent portion of the agenda? Seeing none, may we now have a motion to waive reading of the titles of 30-day legislation? Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you now read those into the set record for the ordinance of 30-day legislation?
Finance Committee, Resolution 307X-2019, ordinances 2808, 2859, 2869, 2922-2019. Recreation and Parks Committee, ordinances 2939 and 2947-2019. Public Utilities Committee, ordinances 745-2019, 2030, 2787, 2801, 2805, 2825, 2828, 2830, 2875-2019. Technology Committee, ordinance 2762-2019. Public Service and Transportation Committee, ordinances 2850, 2851, 2853-2019. Economic Development Committee, ordinances 2877, 2898, 2900-2019. Rules and Reference Committee, ordinances 2979, 2983, 2984-2019. Zoning Committee, ordinances 2899, 2903, 2968, 2972-2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We don't have any speakers on first reading. The following ordinance appear on our agenda as consent actions. Will the clerk now read those into the record?
Resolutions of expression 310X, 314, 311, 312, 313X-2019. Finance Committee, ordinances 2712, 2717, 2718, 2790, 2791, 2800, 2809, 2810, 2824, 2858, 2882, 2973-2019. Recreation and Parks Committee, ordinances 2945 and 2986-2019. Education Committee, ordinance 2792-2019. Public Safety Committee, ordinances 2601, 2716, 2720, 2793, 2834-2019. Public Utilities Committee, ordinances 2107, 2518, 2735, 2766, 2771-2019. Neighborhoods Committee, ordinance 2723-2019. Technology Committee, ordinance 2665, 2747, 2816, 2836, 2840-2019. Public Service and Transportation Committee, ordinances 2673, 2704, 2713, 2728, 2729, 2743, 2764, 2822, 2841, 2845, 2849, and 2854-2019. Housing Committee, ordinances 2874, 2911, 2912, 2913, 2930, 2951-2019. Criminal Justice and Judiciary Committee, ordinance 2857-2019. Economic Development Committee, ordinances 2572, 2697, 2781, 2872, 2876, 2901, 2902, 2932, 2933, and 2934-2019. Administration Committee, ordinance 2846 and 2860-2019. Health and Human Services Committee, ordinances 2760, 2767, 2819, 2827, 2870, 2873, 2891, 2906, 2910-2019. Rules and Reference Committee, ordinance 2847-2019. And appointments from the Mayor's Office numbered A0, 192, 193, 194, and 195-2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have one speaker on the consent portion of the agenda, Mr. Nathaniel Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, welcome back to council. Mr. Wilkins is speaking on ordinance 2912 in the Housing Committee.
Oh. 1612 Arlington Avenue. Mr. Nathaniel George Wilkins as a resident. I'm speaking in against of I believe it's 29/12/2019, 1423 east of Hudson Street. This property has sit vacant for multiple times, almost 12 years, due to the Linden community. This property was sold for $90,500 back in a couple years ago, sold for $67,000, $30,000, and beyond. I believe the city had took this property over now, the Central Ohio Community Investment. There's 6 reasons why I'm against this property, not to have the city to take it. You know, their goal in mind is to demo these properties. But like I said, multiple time after time, 2 years and years ago, property that sit like this diamond in the rough can be rehabbed and sold for just people that's on a fixed income or multi-disability. You know, as I be on the bus line of Route 31, going to different parts of the East End to High Street, and I see this property has been empty for decades and time after time. Again, I have been in my house for 12 years, since 2007. This house has not been renovated by citizens' involvement or anything, but it seems like we having property that sit all over the state of Ohio, of Columbus, has rotted away, is not nothing being done. There's been multiple times I hear a lot of people cannot find affordable housing. I know y'all have something in plan called land trust acquisition. You know, let's do something with these older homes and giving people a second chance, just like these homes that sit idolized and empty time after time again. I have done countless work at the library, pull up photographs, area views of property that sit like this time after time again. You know, something's got to be done. We want trades back in certain parts of the neighborhood have high density of vacant abandonment properties and also commercializing properties. You know, something's got to be done. If it's not money involved, maybe some type of a certificate that's being done through the city for young professionals or anything else like this. And again, I'm against for the city to demo this property because this is a diamond in a rough. Property can be turned around quickly with citizen involvement. You know, there's been multiple times I look in my area, why not something can be done with resident involvement, visually impaired and population people? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. Director, do you have any comments on this particular?
Yes, thank you, President Harden, members of council. This parcel will be acquired, and the buyer intends to rehabilitate this parcel and use for single-family home ownership.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Wilkins, for your advocacy. Are there any other questions or concerns with the consent portion of the agenda? Seeing none, may I now get a motion for approval of these items designated as consent? Second? Clerk, would you call the roll by voice, please?
Ms. Brown? Mr. Brown? Yes. Mr. Dorans? Yes. Ms. Favor? Yes. Mr. Remy? Ms. Tyson? Yes. President Harden?
Yes. Consent portion carries. We will now proceed with the second reading of 30-day legislation and table emergency legislation. The first committee coming before council is Finance. Councilmember President Pro Tem Brown chairs that committee. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Harden. In Finance tonight, we have Ordinance 2863-2019 to authorize a transfer between projects within the Safety Bond Fund and to amend the 2019 capital improvements budget to authorize and direct the Director of Finance and Management to issue a purchase order to W.W. Williams Midwest Incorporated and to Keen's Body and Fleet for the purchase of engine and body repairs, respectively, for Columbus Fire Ladder number 15, BT 25-173, for the Division of Fire, to waive the formal bidding requirements of City Code Chapter 329, to expend $80,665.23 from the Safety Bond Fund, and to declare an emergency. Columbus Fire Ladder number 15 requires extensive engine and body repairs. A formal bid waiver is being considered in order to repair and return this vehicle to active service as soon as possible. Director Lombardi, do you have anything additional you'd like to share about the process?
Sure. Thank you, President Harden, President Pro Tem Brown, other council members. Ladder number 15 had some body damage that needed to be repaired. We do have a contract with a company to do body damage. And then suddenly the engine decided it didn't want to work for us, and so we had to get an emergency repair done on the engine so that we can get this ladder back into service so that our first responders have a vehicle to use for our community. So that's what the waiver is for the engine repair part of this.
Great. Any questions from colleagues? Seeing none, move for passage.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Next, we have Ordinance 2924-2019 to authorize a transfer of, excuse me, $1 million between sub-funds of the general fund, thus depositing such funds into the Economic Stabilization Fund in order to exceed the goal of a rainy day fund balance of $80 million adopted in Resolution 0073X-2017, one full year early, and to declare an emergency. As Columbus prepares for the future, building a healthy rainy day fund is a responsible use of taxpayer dollars. As noted in the title, this deposit will meet the city's savings goal of $80 million 1 full year ahead of schedule. It's important to highlight that we were able to do this thanks to higher than expected revenue in 2019, as delayed collections from 2018 came in late following recent changes to state tax law. Mayor Ginther and the city set a new goal of $90 million in the rainy day fund by the end of 2024, which will include a proposed deposit of $2.5 million in 2020. Any questions from colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second. Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
These next three ordinances in finance make up the mayor's proposed 2020 operating budget for the city, which was announced last Wednesday. We will be tabling the ordinances tonight in order to hold public hearings in the coming weeks as council reviews the budget prior to passage. I will hold the first hearing in council chambers this Wednesday, November 20th at 2 p.m. This will provide a broad overview of the budget with brief presentations from city departments. Then additional hearings will be held to cover each department's budget in greater detail, chaired by council members who chair those committees. The schedule for these hearings has been published in the city bulletin and will be shared by our communications team, so watch your inbox. As always, public input is welcome throughout the process, either through public testimony engaged at these hearings or by contacting any of our council offices directly. With that, I will read the titles and request to table the three budget ordinances. Are there any questions or comments before I do so? Great. Ordinance 2925-2019 to make appropriations for the 12 months ending December 31st, 2020 for each of the several object classes for which the City of Columbus has to provide from the monies known to be in the treasury of said City of Columbus in the fund known as the general fund during the said 12 months from the collection of all taxes and from other sources of revenue, the amount of $965 million, and to declare an emergency. I request to table this ordinance.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Table.
Next is yes. Next is ordinance 2926-2019 to make appropriations and transfers for the 12 months ending December 31st, 2020 for other funds for various divisions, to authorize the city auditor to make transfers as may be necessary and to declare an emergency. I request to table indefinitely.
Second. Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Table indefinitely.
Next ordinance 2927-2019 to make appropriations for the 12 months ending December 31st, 2020 for selected other funds for various divisions, to authorize the city auditor to make transfers as may be necessary and to declare an emergency. I request to table this ordinance indefinitely as well.
Second. Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Table indefinitely.
Thank you, President Harden. That's all I have in finance. May I move to Recreation and Parks?
Please.
Thank you. Tonight in Recreation and Parks, we have ordinance 2611-2019 to authorize the expenditure in the amount of $175,475.95 for the purchase of Gulf turf pesticides from the Recreation and Parks Operating Fund, to authorize the Director of Finance and Management to enter into contract with Harrell's LLC for the purchase of golf course pesticides for the Recreation and Parks Department, to waive the formal competitive bidding provisions of the Columbus City Code 329, and to declare an emergency. I want to emphasize what this ordinance covers. The city operates 6 golf courses: Airport, Menal, Champions, Raymond, Turnberry, and Wilson. The use of the pesticides in this ordinance allows the courses to be maintained at a level that is comparable with other courses in the area, and therefore ensures utilization of the courses. Without maintaining course conditions comparable to other golf courses, utilization of our courses would decrease, and revenue for the ongoing operations of the Rec and Parks Department would be reduced. The Rec and Parks Department has engaged in an effort over years to increase some of its fee-based services in order to continue financial sustainability for the free services we offer. I've also been engaging in ongoing conversations with the department safeguarding the most responsible usage of these pesticides department-wide. The result is we have cut the usage of pesticides that contain glyphosate in half in our parks in the last 2 years. The sports division has worked to decrease usage on sports fields and will completely eliminate using pesticides with glyphosate next year. The Parks Division will also run a pilot in 2020 at several different parks to reduce pesticide use by allowing grass to grow freely at the base of trees. Responsible environmental stewardship is a priority for me and the City of Columbus, and specifically the Recreation and Parks Department. So I want to thank Director Rakoski and his staff for putting a large amount of time and effort into reducing the usage of pesticides in our parks and for their ongoing work in the area that I know will continue. I'd like to pause for a moment to give Director Rakoski an opportunity to please update us on these efforts. I also know that Mike Musser is here as well to talk about some of the innovative ways we're utilizing our golf courses as green spaces. Director?
President Pro Tem Brown, President Harden, members of council. In August, the Columbus Recreation and Parks Department completed and adopted our first ever integrated pest management policy. The policy unified existing policies that we had across our sections within the department that use these tools to manage our parks and golf courses and sports fields. The policy was formed after feedback from residents and city council who collectively wanted a better understanding of our department's chemical use, specifically regarding glyphosate. And as you mentioned, that's the active ingredient in products like Roundup. To ensure the department was taking the best steps to serve Columbus visitors and residents, we spent last year researching best practices nationwide to keep Columbus's green spaces safe, clean, and accessible. We examined other cities' best practices, reviewed recommendations from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the National Recreation and Parks Association, and even the National Cancer Institute. Integrated pest management policy creates a science-based and sustainable process for the department's use of pesticides and fertilizers. Our pest management practices are guided by protection of public health and safety, conservation of assets, including biodiverse assets, promotion of public enjoyment, and fiscal responsibility. Under this pest management policy, environmentally sensitive actions, these are actions that we take based on only what's necessary to address the issue that we are currently encountering, are taken to control invasive species, weeds, and other pests on an ongoing basis whenever possible. And this includes working towards a significant reduction, as you mentioned, in overall pesticide use, especially pesticides that include glyphosate. Columbus Recreation and Parks maintains 6 golf courses totaling 915 acres. Only 24% of golf course acreage is under turf care, meaning that we are only using pesticides when absolutely necessary. We also created an internal working group within our department that has various expertise on that group. We have folks from parks and sports, also folks from our sustainability and environmental protection areas. These folks are very passionate about what we do, and that committee is going to continue to meet in an ongoing effort to keep moving all of this forward, pilot new approaches to dealing with these issues, and also to continue to report back to the public and to City Council. The ordinance that you have in front of you, as you mentioned, is for a little over $175,000 for the purchase of golf turf pesticides from our operating fund. Again, with the expectation that the department will continue to explore practices to decrease pesticide usage by building all that on the work that we did in 2017, 18, and 19, and really working towards keep moving the pest management policy forward. To provide an update on the changes, as you mentioned, at the golf courses, the innovations in our practices, I'd like Mike Musser, who's the Columbus Recreation and Parks Golf Administrator, to come up here to the podium. I will say Mike is also the chair of our internal working committee, and we couldn't have picked a better person to do that because he's extremely knowledgeable and passionate about this issue. And as you'll hear from some of the things that he's done at the courses, he's really been an innovator in what we're doing here in Columbus. So thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Excuse me, Council President Pro Tem Brown and other City Council members. As Director Rakowski shared, we maintain 915 acres at 6 golf courses right now. 24 acres of that we consider under high level of turf care, which includes fertilizers, pesticides, mowing, and just a daily routine. More so than that, 4% of our golf courses what our concentration is on, and that is our tee boxes and our greens, the playing surfaces that really require a lot of care. My goal as a city golf course administrator is to ensure that our golf courses are safe, fun, accessible to all of our users, residents, and visitors. I strongly believe our golf courses are parks that you golf in, and they should be treated with intentional care. This is why the Golf Division has taken steps to reduce pesticides and to continue to enhance the natural environments of our golf courses. Some of these steps that we've taken in the past couple years, we started to plant pest-resistant cultivars, so we hand-select grasses that we plant. They are resistant to certain diseases and can resist or can sustain short mowing. Apologize for the congestion. Utilizing rollers in rotation with mowers on the greens. This enables us to roll every other day versus mow every other day. Rolling actually helps suppress the disease as well. We purchased those rollers 2 years ago. Again, helps us reduce the cost of the pesticides. We did deep tine aeration this spring, which was the first time in 4 years since I've been here. And what that does is it allows the root system to grow earlier in the spring, healthier plant, less pesticides. Training our maintenance staff, we brought people in from Georgia and Florida, and Ohio State University to train our staff to better educate them on new chemistries and new operating procedures. Lastly, we've added buffers to the creeks and ponds to improve water quality. At Raymond Memorial Golf Course, the department completed a stream restoration project which stabilized the stream bank and decreased the negative impact of erosive flows in the stream. We are currently working to complete a second restoration project in 2020, and we understand that our golf courses are part of a bigger system and that we need to take care of the water before it gets back to the creeks. We're interested in exploring better and new ways. We're continue to explore options, and we will continue to maintain our green space, parks, and golf courses the best that we can. This legislation will help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Administrator Musser. I appreciate your time, and thank you, Director Rakowski. I appreciate the ongoing work of the department. Are there any questions from colleagues? Councilmember Brown?
Chairman, I guess to say to Director Rakowski, and I think for all of us sitting here in council, to say thank you to a young lady who comes down here every Monday that she possibly can to point out issues with regards to the environment. Ms. Unger is sitting back there in the back, and I think, again, because I don't play golf, so I wasn't aware of the issues that were going on until she brought it to my attention. And the relationship I have with Paul Rakowski was a positive one, and he took on responsibility and took care of the issue. But I think it's important for us as council members to acknowledge that when citizens do come down to council, for them to be aware of the fact that we do listen and pay attention, and that the directors do respond. So in that regard, I want to say thank you to Ms. Unger.
Councilmember?
Thank you, Chairwoman Brown, and thank you to Paul, because to reduce it by 50% is pretty significant. And so I appreciate the effort of this committee, the committee chair, and the work of the Recreation and Parks Department for listening and moving. And it is significant for 50% in terms of not using pesticides. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Councilmember. And we know that the work is ongoing, so I'm appreciative to the department and the support of this council. Seeing no further questions, I move for passage.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, President Harden. That's all I have in my committees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next committee to come before council is the Neighborhoods Committee. The committee is chaired by Councilmember Dorans. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Harden. Tonight we have ordinance number 2886-2019 to authorize Columbus City Council to enter in a grant agreement with Stonewall Columbus in support of programming that advances social justice and the ability to achieve sustainable pathways out of poverty, to authorize an appropriation expenditure within the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund, and to declare emergency. Before comments from my colleagues, I just want to thank Councilmembers Remy, Favor, and President Harden for the continued support of Stonewall Columbus. This program will continue to advance social justice and their ability to achieve sustainable pathways out of poverty and continue Stonewall's mission that has been the same for 40 years, which is uplifting the LGBTQ+ community. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Remy.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Dorans. I'd like to introduce A.J. Casey, the Executive Director of Stonewall, and ask her to come forward. Again, as you mentioned in the title, the grant for Stonewall Columbus will provide programming that will actively support the city's vision of developing pathways out of poverty. Some of the programming includes connecting people who need support to programs and services that help them elevate from economic insecurity to economic security, making it easier for gay and transgender people to access necessary programs and training required for them to achieve success through the development of enhanced skills needed for successful employment, serving LGBTQ plus people who have a disproportionately high likelihood of living at or below 200% of the federal poverty line due, in part, to a limited capacity based on knowledge, skills, and access to manage financial resources effectively. AJ, if you could share a few words about who Stonewall Columbus is, what Stonewall Columbus does, where to go for more information, and any other thoughts that you may have, I'd appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Council President Harden, Council President Pro Tem Brown, and Councilmember Remy, and everybody on council. Hope I didn't mess that part up. Thank you. I want to say that Stonewall Columbus started in 1981, called Stonewall Union. It was the first and continues to be the only LGBTQ plus community center here in Central Ohio. In 2021, we will celebrate our 40 years of service here in Central Ohio. And we serve thousands of people a year, of course. You know, we do Columbus Pride, where we had well over 800,000 people come this year. So anybody who would like more information can reach us at stonewallcolumbus.org, info@stonewallcolumbus.org, or can reach out to any person on the staff through our website. You can find us. When I was trying to think about what to say to you tonight, I never really know how to say thank you to the depth that I mean it. So I thought I'd share with you about a few weekdays at Stonewall Columbus. Weekdays as in days of the week, but week as in days when people reach out to us because they themselves are feeling weak. I want to tell you about an event that happened on a Wednesday. The lady who came into Stonewall that day lived in one of the wealthier suburbs of Columbus. She was a mom with a son, a teenage transgender son. She met me in the hall and she told me she was happy to support her son in his transition, but she said to me, "I don't know how to help him find his tribe." And then she paused and I could see she was upset. And she said, "I don't know how to find my tribe as a mom." So we were able to talk and offer her resources that would help her, that would help her son, because she stepped into Stonewall Columbus. I want to tell you about something that happened on a Friday, a random Friday. A woman who was new to this country came into Stonewall. She came with a local sponsor and interpreter. She had fled from her home country, which I won't name, because it was illegal for her to be a lesbian in her home country. Not only could she be maligned and stigmatized, but literally could be killed for being a lesbian. She was able to talk with us. We had staff there to talk with her through her interpreter, and we were able to help her in her bid for asylum in the United States, because she made her way into Columbus, into Stonewall Columbus. And then I want to tell you about something that happened on a random weekday at Stonewall. A gentleman in his 30s had come in to Stonewall. He'd heard about us. Just a few weeks earlier, he had fled to Columbus from another state, running from an abusive marriage. And while he was married, he was well-to-do. By the time he left it all behind to come to Columbus to find safety and refuge from that situation, by the time he made his way to Stonewall, he was at the end of his rope, the end of his finances, and the end of his hope. He was able to sit with a member of our staff at length and share his fears and his frustrations and many, many tears. We helped him find a place to sleep. We helped him find food. And it was just 2 months later that he came back to Stonewall and told us that we were the first place he had found in Columbus where he could share his life story and get the resources that he needed. And he shared with us that he had found a good job in his chosen field, and that he was really, truly able to start his life anew. These are just 3 examples of the thousands of people who come to Stonewall every year for help, for resources, for a way forward, for a way out of their weak days. And so tonight, on this very special Monday, I want to say thank you to all of you members of council, with very special thanks, of course, to Councilmember Remy, Doran, Favor, and President Harding for your support of Stonewall Columbus and for all the help that we're able to give to people in the LGBTQ community who come to us for guidance, resources, and sometimes just a listening ear. We literally could not do this work this year, even without your help. And so your support matters greatly to all of the staff and board who are here with me tonight, and to the thousands of people that we help every year. So again, I just want to say thank you on behalf of our board and our staff, and on behalf of at least one mom and one transgender teenager, on behalf of one refugee, on behalf of one survivor of domestic violence, and on behalf of a grateful LGBTQ community. I say to all of you, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you so much, AJ. We appreciate you coming down and sharing a little bit of the mission of Stonewall. We know that you serve countless members of our community, and you do it very well. And I know that how much of your heart you put into the role. And so it is a real pleasure to be able to help in a small way support the mission of the organization and all the LGBTQ community that you serve. So it is really a pleasure to be able to do this tonight.
Thank you so very much.
Councilmember Tyson.
Thank you, Councilmember Remy. And I certainly, AJ, want to just say thank you for the work that you do in our community. And I thank the council members who are funding this particular effort. But I certainly want to make sure that you stand on the shoulders of people who came before you.
Absolutely.
And this council and councils in the past have certainly been significant funders of this organization.
Absolutely.
And the building in which you are now in was certainly funded by this council to put the dollars in to be able to support the capital budget.
Absolutely.
And so this whole council, whether we can, each of us fund particular areas, we're all supportive of the work of Stonewall. Yes. And I just really do appreciate your leadership. I appreciate that you're able, the stories that you told us today. And I also appreciate every single person, every board member, the executive directors, the team of individuals that have certainly been working at Stonewall to bring it to where it is today. I look forward to you continuing to move forward to help, more individuals in our community, to give them a safe space to be able to tell their stories and to move their lives forward.
Thank you so very much.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Chairman,
President Hardin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too echo Councilmember Tyson's appreciation to the entire council for their support of this piece of legislation. I just want to say how that I'm grateful for an ecosystem here in Columbus that supports LGBTQ people regardless of where they are. And it's not a zero-sum game. As an openly gay person myself, you want to find as many welcoming doors as you can to go into. I'm so glad that Stonewall is one of those welcoming doors and has been so for 40 years for LGBTQI people throughout this city. It does still stand as a symbol of hope for many folks and I'm very appreciative that you told the stories because this is about individuals. These are about people who need help, who need support, and whose services are being met. It might not be comprehensive, because in one person, one organization, one council member cannot do this work alone. But it's our collective responsibility to make sure that there is an ecosystem of support for LGBT people, regardless of what their background is, be that gay, straight, trans, black, white, or how they engage and what their comfort level of engagement. I am proud that this council has stepped up to make sure that this piece of the puzzle is supported, and I'm grateful for the work that you do.
And so
Thank you,
we'll be
Mr. Chairman.
grateful for you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, then I move for passage.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you so much, AJ, for
Thank you
coming
very
down.
much. Thank you all so very much.
Chairman Dorans, thank you for
Thank
allowing
you,
me the
Councilmember Remy.
opportunity.
With your permission, President Harden, I'd like to move to Technology Committee.
Please.
Thank you. I have ordinance number 2812-2019 to appropriate $1,694,641 within the Special Income Tax Fund to authorize the Director of Finance and Management on behalf of the Department of Technology to establish a contract purchase order with the Dell Marketing LP utilizing a state term schedule for Microsoft Enterprise Software licensing and for a true-up cost associated with the 2019 agreement to authorize the expenditure of $1,897,207.21 or so much therefore as may be necessary from the Special Income Tax Fund, General Fund, and Information Services Operating Fund for this purpose and to declare emergency. Microsoft Office is the city's technology standard for desktop computing software, currently used by approximately 7,500 city employees in their daily business. The city also utilizes Microsoft software to support a number of enterprise applications. This ordinance will enable the city to obtain the latest version of Microsoft software utilizing a single agreement for the entire city. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, President Harden. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee to come before council is the Public Service and Transportation Committee. Committee is chaired by Councilmember Favor. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Harden. Tonight in Public Service and Transportation, we have ordinance number 2579-2019 to appropriate funds within the Upper Albany West TIF Fund to authorize the Director of Public Service to enter into contract with Miller Brothers Construction Incorporated for the roadway improvements Hamilton Road Extension Central College to Walnut Road project, to transfer cash only of $3,728,261.49 from P44301-10000 to P530161-1000202, to authorize the expenditure of up to $3,728,361.49 from the Upper Albany West TIF Fund for the project and to declare an emergency. This contract includes widening Central College Road for the development of turn lanes at the Hamilton Road intersection and at the intersection of High Rock Drive. Hamilton Road will also be widened to the south of Central College Road and will be extended approximately 1,100 feet to the north of Central College Road. Other improvements include sidewalk, shared use path, new water lines, storm sewers, trunk line, lighting, and pedestrian facilities. Are there any additional comments or questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I would move for passage.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance number 2639-2019 to authorize the Director of Public Service to enter into a professional services contract with Kimley Horn and Associates Incorporated for the Mobility Study Northwest Corridor Project, to appropriate funds within the Street Construction Maintenance and Repair Fund, to authorize the expenditure of up to $500,000 from the Street Construction Maintenance and Repair Fund to pay for this contract, to authorize the Director of Public Service to enter into agreements with and to accept contributions from other organizations in relation to the project, to authorize the return of any unused funds received from other organizations at the end of the project and to declare an emergency. I'd like to ask Justin Goodwin. Is he here? Wonderful. With the Department of Public Service to give us an overview of the Northwest Corridor project and what residents can expect. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. Good evening, Council. The Northwest Corridor Mobility Study is the first major implementation initiative to arise out of the Inside 2050 Corridor Concept Study, which was unveiled earlier this year. But I want to emphasize the intent of this project is not to be yet another study after another study. This initiative is really intended to be an action plan. As all of Council knows, and many in the region have come to recognize, Central Ohio is projected to grow up by up to 1 million people by the year 2050, and this presents both great opportunities and challenges as we consider where people will live, where they'll work, and how they're going to get around the city and the region. And the Corridor Concept Study, in partnership with MORPC and many other partners within the region, analyzed a series of potential corridors for high-capacity transit improvements and focused growth to support and be supported by those transit improvements. The Northwest Corridor was one of those corridors. And in many ways, it is among the most challenging of them. For one, it's already experiencing congestion today. Anybody that commutes on Route 315 experiences that. And it also has a number of significant engineering challenges with interchanges, bridges, the river, underpasses, railroads that present barriers and will make it difficult without being resolved to provide a new transit solution and other mobility options through the corridor. So if, and I'll say when, we are able to resolve a number of those challenges, there are great opportunities. There's a high potential for job growth throughout the Northwest Corridor. The corridor links multiple major institutions and job centers, most notably the Ohio State University and its growing West Campus, among others. It's also an opportunity to introduce new affordable housing options with new development throughout this corridor to meet another very important regional need facing not just the city of Columbus, but multiple municipalities throughout Columbus, the Central Ohio region. This study will comprehensively examine transportation and mobility options and solutions throughout this corridor. And the corridor generally will examine the Olentangy River Road corridor and its surrounding areas and the surrounding transportation network that link into Olentangy River Road, generally from Bethel Road and extending down to West Broad Street. And if you think about it now, there is not a direct connection from Olentangy River Road to West Broad Street. So that's one of those challenges that we'll be exploring. There's great potential to provide additional access to jobs if we can link the West Broad Street corridor to the Olentangy River Road and the Northwest Corridor and those major institutions and job centers that I mentioned. Most notably, in terms of transportation solutions, this will be analyzing a preferred transit mode and an alignment, its termini within the corridor, stations and stops, and detailed right-of-way design. So unlike Corridor Concepts, which was, as we say, mode agnostic, it was higher level, emphasizing the need for high-capacity transit. Now we're getting into the details. This will determine exactly what that transit is going to look like and how we can implement it, and a phasing plan and funding strategy to implement it. It will also inform transit-supportive land use and development patterns because transit isn't successful without the appropriate type of development to serve that transit. Also, I want to stress this isn't just about the Northwest Corridor. This is the first of a number of corridor initiatives that the city and partners will be undertaking over the next year. This project will create a framework and a template for us to pursue other similar types of initiatives in other corridors as we move forward in addressing both the mobility and development challenges and opportunities that we're all facing throughout the region. The intent is to identify a solution for the Northwest Corridor that we can implement as rapidly as possible. So this study will last approximately 12 to 18 months as we proceed in finalizing the scope with the consultant firm, Kimberly Horn and Associates. Will determine a very specific project schedule in the coming month as we move forward. We will be engaging a number of partners and stakeholders. We're pleased to be pursuing this project in partnership with a number of funding partners, including CODA, MORPC, The Ohio State University, and a number of philanthropic contributions as well. And as we move forward and engage all of those stakeholders and others, including the general public and the various neighborhoods and jurisdictions along this corridor, we're really excited to explore what the opportunities are here and to set a model for both mobility and development that can guide us moving into the next decade, which will be very exciting for the city and the region.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Just a few questions. You mentioned 12 to 18 months. Does that mean that the study is going to last 12 to 18 months, or is that implementation?
So the study itself will last 12 to 18 months. We'll try to keep that as close to 12 months as possible, at least for preliminary recommendations. The intent is to, at the end of that period, that we have a very clear definitive implementation strategy. So we know exactly what the design solution is for various segments of the corridor, how we're going to deal with some of those barriers that I mentioned, these traffic knots at certain interchanges, for example, and we can proceed with the next more detailed level of preliminary engineering. The intent is ideally to be moving forward with a constructible solution in a 3 to 5 year timeframe.
And for some of our residents who may not be aware of the corridor concepts and Insight 2050 work, could you elaborate on the other concepts, corridors that will be explored in the future?
Yes, so as we engage our various partners, CODA most notably and MORPC as well, and others, those are ongoing conversations that we're having about how to be very strategic about pursuing various other corridors. The Northwest, as I mentioned, was one of 5 model corridors that were explored in the corridor concept studies. I want to emphasize those were models. They were not intended to say that these are the 5 or the only 5. It was intended to create a framework to guide how we think about growth and transportation throughout the region, throughout the city. So over the next number of months, we'll be continuing to engage our partners to identify what are the next corridors that warrant this next level of analysis.
And what is the plan to make sure that the community is engaged in this process as well?
So one of the first tasks that we'll be engaging our consulting team on is developing a public involvement plan. So public involvement is going to be very important in making sure that we vet all of the appropriate solutions, that we think about the unintended consequences potentially of changing things like land use and the transportation system. So while I don't have details yet, that's one of the first things we'll be doing. We'll have the project website available through which can be accessed through the Department of Public Service website. So there will be opportunities to engage and provide information or gain information from reviewing the website. And then as we move forward, engaging our partners and our stakeholders, we'll have a robust community outreach effort.
Okay. I'd like to acknowledge my co-sponsor, President Hardin, for his support on this legislation. President Hardin, any comments from you?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Justin and everyone at Public Service. This piece of legislation is probably the piece of legislation I'm most excited to vote on this year. We talk a lot about growth, and we know for sure we're going to grow. The question is, how will we grow, and what will the ramifications be for the residents now, but also the residents of our future, and what kind of quality of life that we will have. I think this is a big first step as we start to plan out a transit city solution for the city. The one point that I wanted to highlight that you spoke about, a couple. This council has been having a lot of conversations about traffic, about transportation, about land use, about density. This study will wrap all of that up. Like those points will be crucial to this study and will give us some type of a framework to move forward with, specifically on this corridor. But secondly, I think, and most importantly, we're not talking about building a corridor. We're talking about building a transit system, a network of corridors. And so even though that this is, we are kicking off with the Northwest Corridor, you spoke to the difficulties in the knots and such. It really is the hardest of the corridors to design. So, but we are focused on other corridors as well. This is not one corridor and gets it done. This is starting to build out a network of conversations. Councilmember Favor hit on it. The community engagement will be critically important going forward as we make sure that these decisions have positive effects on our residents now and in the future. Did you get, I don't know, did you speak to the 5 identified corridors?
Not specifically. So just to clarify, in the corridor concept study, the 5 corridors that were analyzed included, of course, the Northwest Corridor. I'll note that this section, the Bethel to Broad section, is really a phase of a larger corridor that was examined in that study. So that concept extended ultimately all the way to Dublin. So this would be a first piece of what could be extended into something more robust. The study also included a northeast corridor, so that's generally Cleveland Avenue with potentially some adjustments to the alignment of the CMAX. It looked at the West Broad Street corridor. It looked at the East Main Street corridor, which is one of a couple of potential options for extending to the east side of the city and the region. It also looked at the southeast corridor, which would ultimately be a connection to the Rickenbacker area. All of those have great potential as we look to transit and development opportunities in the future, and there are likely other corridors that would benefit from a similar type of analysis as well.
Yeah, that's important, that even though we lifted up these 5 for study, there are others that are just as ripe for this type of focus and development in those conversations. And then the last thing, I would just like to thank the other partners who this is a true public-private partnership with OSU, CODA, MORPC, Franklin County, and a lot of our friends in the private sector who made this project come together. Certainly want to thank, again, Public Service, want to thank my staff, Zach Davidson, and folks who have worked long and hard on this, and we look forward to being a part of the conversation going forward. I know council will want to be really engaged going forward. Chair.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you,
also
Chair.
note, I'll also note that Mr. Borntrigger has some supplemental information about the project to share with council staff.
Before you walk away, I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank Council President Harden and Councilmember Favor. And as a zoning chair, this is really important because what we're finding right now, and I'm most certainly going to be contacting my Councilmember Favor to continue this discussion, because as a zoning chair, there are significant concerns in regards to development and development of density and transportation. And those are the areas that we are finding that individuals don't necessarily want density, and they definitely are concerned about the traffic. And I think we certainly, as being elected officials, that we need to make sure that if we are looking at this density and placing density in people's communities, we need to also know that there is a plan for transportation. And so look forward to having some additional conversations, because that is something that right now is a significant concern around zoning.
Are there any other questions or concerns from council members? Well, Mr. Goodman, thank you so
Thank
much. Let me turn it over very quickly. Assistant Director Borntrigger, do you have additional comments?
Not specifically. We're incredibly excited for this opportunity over the next several years to build out these corridors and to engage the public. I have additional pamphlets of some collateral. If folks would like to see it afterwards, I can give it to your staff or to you directly. Just let me know.
Thank you very much. With that, I would move for passage.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Thank you. That's all I have in public service. May I please move on to criminal justice and judiciary?
Please.
First, we have ordinance number 2892-2019 to authorize the city attorney to settle the lawsuit captioned Stephanie Clifford v. Shana M. Keckley et al., pending in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio, to authorize the expenditure of the sum of $450,000 in settlement of the lawsuit and to declare an emergency. I'd like to invite Solicitor General Laura Baker Morrish with the City Attorney's Office to speak about the details of this ordinance.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. I'm here this evening to request on behalf of City Attorney Klein that Council authorize the City Attorney's Office to settle the lawsuit captioned Stephanie Clifford v. Shana M. Keckley, pending before the United States District Court for the amount of $450,000. The Department of Public Safety has approved this request. Late in the evening of July 11, 2018, Stephanie Clifford, also known as Stormy Daniels, was arrested by detectives with the Vice Section of the Columbus Division of Police who were working undercover at Sirens Gentlemen's Club in the city of Columbus. The involved officers were Shayna Keckley, Whitney Lancaster, Susan Prather, and Stephen Rosser. Ms. Clifford was charged with 3 counts of violating Revised Code 2907.40C2, illegal sexually oriented activity in a sexually oriented business. She was handcuffed, transported from the scene of the arrest, and slated at the Franklin County Jail following identification processing at police headquarters. Ms. Clifford's charges were dismissed the next day at the request of the Columbus City Attorney's Office. The City Attorney's Office stated that one of the elements of the offense, that the person regularly, meaning consistently or repeatedly, appeared at the sexually oriented business, was not alleged in the officer's complaint. The City Attorney's Office further determined that the factual allegations failed to support the claim that Ms. Clifford touched a patron, as she was only alleged to have touched on-duty police detectives who are, by definition, not considered patrons under the statute. On July 19, 2018, CPD initiated an internal affairs investigation into the incident to determine whether the police actions taken were improper, politically motivated, and inconsistent with CPD policies and procedures. At the conclusion of the investigation, CPD determined that Ms. Clifford's arrest was improper, and Interim Police Chief Thomas Quinlan made the following recommendations. 1, the termination of Officers Rosser and Lancaster. 2, a 240-hour suspension for Lieutenant Ronald Kemmerling. 3, a 120-hour suspension for Sergeant Scott Soha. And 4, a written reprimand to Commander Terry Moore. The city's final disciplinary determinations as to Rosser, Lancaster, and Kemmerling are scheduled for hearing and are yet to be decided by the city's public safety director. It's my understanding that 2 of them, at least, I believe, are scheduled next week. Ms. Clifford alleges that her arrest was politically motivated, and the officers were retaliating against her because of the alleged extramarital affair with President Donald Trump. Ms. Clifford's lawsuit names the city, Commander Moore, and Officers Keckley, Lancaster, Prather, and Rosser as defendants. Ms. Clifford alleges, among other things, that she was arrested and charged without probable cause in violation of her 4th and 14th Amendment rights, and that the city's policies and practices were the moving force behind her arrest. In her complaint, Ms. Clifford made a demand for over $2 million. The city was compelled by the existence of a conflict of interest occasioned by the ongoing disciplinary process to seek outside counsel to represent the officers in the lawsuit filed by Ms. Clifford. Based on upcoming costs and expenses, as well as the risks faced in litigation, including the possibility of paying plaintiffs' attorney's fees, the city determined that entering into the settlement was in the best interest of the city and everyone involved. The funds to pay for this settlement will come from general fund accounts. The settlement will release the city, Commander Moore, and Officers Keckley, Lancaster, Prather, and Rosser from any and all claims arising out of the July 2018 incident. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Solicitor General. Can you provide us with a status of the Vice Unit currently?
Status of the Vice Unit itself?
Yes.
Subsequent to this incident, the Vice Unit had been dissolved. It went through a period of time where Interim Chief Thomas Quinlan, I believe, then looked at operational processes within the unit, and it's only recently that a newly constituted unit called PACT has been initiated within the Division of Police, but the unit as it existed at the point in time of this arrest was dissolved.
And I believe you mentioned that the lawsuit that was filed had a number of around $2 million. Was that the overall, does that encompass the entire financial risk that was on the line for the city, or were there some greater numbers that were accounted for?
No, that was the initial request as filed in the complaint. That did not include any compensatory damages that the jury might have determined, nor did it include attorney's fees, which are always an issue in a 1983 claim.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to provide an opportunity for Assistant Director Kate Bashotti to make any comments if you'd like on behalf of Public Safety.
Councilmember Favor, Council President Harden, other council members. The only thing that I'd like to add is that the Hearings with the director are scheduled for Officer Rosser and Officer Lancaster on November 26th, and the hearings for Lieutenant Ron Kimmerling and Sergeant Scott Soha are scheduled for December 11th. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I would move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance number 2921-2019 to authorize the city attorney to settle the claim of Raymond Clifford, to authorize the expenditure of $32,500 within the general fund for payment of the settlement and to declare an emergency. Once again, I'd like to invite Solicitor General Laura Baker Morrish with the City Attorney's Office to speak to the details of this ordinance.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. I wanted to begin by clarifying that Mr. Raymond Clifford is no relation to Stephanie Clifford.
Thank you for that clarification.
This particular case, this lawsuit was captioned Raymond Clifford versus City of Columbus, pending before the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas. We're requesting an authorization to settle this lawsuit for the amount of $32,500. The Department of Public Safety has approved this request. On October 21st, 2015, Raymond was a passenger in a motor vehicle driven by his then-wife, Charlene Clifford. The Clifford vehicle was traveling westbound on East Livingston Avenue. Columbus Police Officer Mark Younger was driving a police cruiser westbound on East Livingston Avenue, directly behind the Clifford's vehicle. As Officer Younger approached South Ohio Avenue, a large box truck in front of the Clifford's vehicle came to a sudden stop, which caused Mrs. Clifford to stop abruptly. Officer Younger was unable to stop his cruiser, and it collided with the back of the Clifford's vehicle. Officer Younger was not on an emergency run at the time of the accident. Raymond Clifford claimed personal injuries as a result of the accident, but Mrs. Clifford was not injured. Mrs. Clifford asserted a claim for property damage to the vehicle she was driving, and that claim is also being settled as a result of this agreement. Mr. Clifford's demand for the personal injuries sustained in the accident was $150,000. Following negotiations, Mr. Clifford agreed to accept $32,500. Based on the city's clear liability, the costs, expenses, and risks of further litigation, the city determined that entering into this settlement was in the best interest of the city and Officer Younger. The funds to pay for this settlement will come from the general fund account. This settlement will release the city, the Columbus Division of Police, and Officer Younger from any and all claims arising out of this October 21, 2015 automobile accident.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I would move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
The next ordinance we have is 3032-2019 to authorize the city attorney to settle the case of Sarah Wheeler v. City of Columbus, pending before the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio, Eastern Division, to authorize a transfer of $300,000 between divisions within the general fund, to authorize the expenditure of $300,000 from the general fund in payment of the settlement, and to declare an emergency. Solicitor General, can you also provide us with some background on this one as well?
I can. Thank you, Councilmember Favor. In this particular incident, I request on behalf of the city attorney that council authorize the city attorney's office to settle the lawsuit captioned Sarah Wheeler versus City of Columbus for the amount of $300,000. The Department of Public Safety has approved this request. Ms. Wheeler was a probationary employee at the Columbus Division of Police. She went through the academy and the field training program. Ms. Wheeler alleges that when she learned that where she was going to be stationed during Phase 4 of her training program, a female officer warned her that that precinct had the reputation of being a boys' club. She claims that on her first day at the precinct, she was told to stand on a table and dance. The officers at that precinct denied this allegation, stating that it was a tradition to have any new officer stand on a table and introduce themselves. After a week at the precinct, her coach contacted the field training office and advised them that Ms. Wheeler was not responding to his coaching. Ms. Wheeler was reassigned to another field training officer. He ultimately recommended that she be terminated at the end of the field training program. When the sergeant at the field training office was reviewing the training packets, she noticed that the field training officer had submitted reports for runs where Ms. Wheeler had performed poorly but did not submit reports for runs when she had performed well. The sergeant recommended that Ms. Wheeler continue in the program, and command ultimately agreed with her recommendation to allow Ms. Wheeler to proceed to her final probationary phase. For her final probationary period runs, she was assigned to a sergeant who was obligated to do at least 2 ride-alongs with her before he released her into permanent service. Wheeler claims that before each of the 3 ride-alongs that they ended up doing, the sergeant told her that women do not belong on the police force. The sergeant denies ever saying this. He recommended Ms. Wheeler's termination, and the division agreed. The stated reason for the termination was that Ms. Wheeler lacked basic officer safety skills. Ms. Wheeler filed a lawsuit claiming that her termination was due to gender discrimination. The city's financial exposure on this case is potentially very high. If the case went to trial, Ms. Wheeler would be entitled to lost wages, which were calculated to be approximately $272,361. Ms. Wheeler would also be entitled to compensatory damages in an amount left to the discretion of the jury. Ms. Wheeler would be entitled to be reinstated to the Division of Police with all seniority restored. And finally, she would also be entitled to her attorney's fees for the entire case, which would likely be in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. The funds to pay for this settlement will come from the general fund, and this settlement will release the city from any and all claims arising out of the termination.
Thank you. Director Pashadi or Solicitor General, can either of you speak to any of the disciplinary efforts that have been made in this case or are potentially pending, if there are any?
Ma'am, I'll have to get back with you on that.
Okay. Have there been any modifications to make sure that this situation does not happen again as it relates to training of officers?
And I would defer to the Department of Public Safety.
And I'll have to get back with you on that as well.
Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Solicitor General, and thank you to the Department of Public Service, Safety. I mean, hearing the statements from the Solicitor General, it becomes clear why we're here today, and to cover the liability of the city. We have to move forward. This is unfortunate, and I'm hoping that the department has learned that there have been steps taken in terms of HR to ensure that the things that were alleged are being addressed, and look forward to hearing back from the department, reporting back to council.
Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that, without judgment on what is true or not true in any individual case, it is clear that, we are a large employer, and a lot of things go on in, a large employer's workforce every single day, and it's time that we improve some practices, and I actually appreciate that the Department of Public Safety has brought on Ms. Bork to kind of help with some Bork, right, was her last name? Burke. Kathleen Burke, to help be a really safe place for everyone who works in the department. So thank you, Councilmember Favor.
Councilmember Tyson.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. I certainly, the solicitor, no, I want to say, I would say Solicitor General, but I was trying to think of solicitor. But I think that I look forward to getting the answers back from the Department of Public Safety. And certainly, like I said, we don't know, who's right, who's wrong, or we don't know the answer. But certainly, we know we want to have an environment where, as you said, everyone has an opportunity to be successful. And certainly, when you get to that phase of training, we have also invested some significant dollars into training that person up to that point. And we would hope that that we would have good documentation to be able to share if a person is doing well, if a person is not doing well, to be able to have an understanding of if a person should move forward and be within our community providing the services, especially in the area of safety, but all of our departments. And so we really do look forward to getting a response back as to how we move forward, and so that we're not having to spend dollars that could certainly be utilized in other areas to move our community forward. So look forward to hearing the feedback. Thank you. Thank you for asking the questions too, Councilmember Favor.
With that being said, I agree wholeheartedly with my fellow council members. These three pieces of legislation do not bring joy for me, and I believe I can speak for the rest of council members at all. And so we are looking forward to those questions that are around training and what is being changed to ensure that these three scenarios, specifically the two scenarios, never occur again within the department. That is information upon receipt that I will share with our residents at a council meeting upon receipt. And so with that, I will move for passage.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Thank you. That's all I have in my committees.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Clerk, please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
We will now go to the zoning committee. Councilmember Tyson chairs that committee. All members serve on that committee. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Harden. Before beginning the zoning agenda, I'll briefly explain the rules of council as pertaining to speaking before council on zonings and variances. We permit 3 speakers on each side, 3 proponents and 3 opponents, and we ask that they limit their remarks to 3 minutes on each side. And we provide an opportunity for rebuttal from the applicant. On the advice of the City Attorney's Office, we ask that anyone here this evening who wishes to speak either for or against any council variance, including staff, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in. I wish to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Please answer, I will. I will. Thank you. The first ordinance is 2749-2019 to grant a variance from the provisions of sections 3332.037 R2F Residential District, 3312.09 aisle, 3312.13A driveway, 3312.25 maneuvering, 3312.39A stripping and marking, 3312.43 required surface for parking, 3312.49C minimum numbers of parking spaces required, and 3332.26 minimum side yard permitted of the Columbus City Codes for the property located at 2407 Indiana Avenue, to permit a rooming house with reduced development standards in the R2F residential district. The applicant is Matthew Dietrich, a care of Attorney David Hodge. The proposed use is a rooming house. The City Department's recommendation is approval, and the University Area Commission's recommendation is approval 931. If there are no questions or comments, I first move to waive second reading.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Waived.
Thank you, and now move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. The next ordinance is 2750-2019 to grant a variance from the provisions of sections 3332.033 R2 Residential District for property located at 7050 Mott's Place Road to permit 2 single-unit dwellings on 1 lot in the R2 Residential District. The applicant is Robert Russell. The proposed use is 2 single-unit dwellings on 1 lot. The City Department's recommendation is approval, and the Greater Southeast Area Commission's recommendation is approval, 8-0. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, I first move to amend to emergency.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Amend it.
Thank you, and now I move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. The next ordinance is 2866-2019 to grant a variance from the provisions of sections 3333.02, AR12, ARLD, and AR1, Apartment Residential District, 3333.09, area requirements, minimum side yard permitted, and 3333.24, rear yard of the Columbus City Codes for the property located at 1285 Oak Street to permit a single-unit dwelling, a carriage house on the rear of a lot developed with a single-unit dwelling with reduced development standards in the ARLD Apartment Residential District. The applicant is Juliet Bullock Architects. The proposed use is 2 single-unit dwellings on 1 lot. The City Department's recommendation is approval. The Near East Area Commission's recommendation is approval, 9-0. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, I would first move to amend to emergency.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Amend it.
Thank you, and now move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. The next ordinance is 2884-2019 to rezone 324 East 2nd Avenue, being 4.23 acres, located at the northeast corner of East 2nd and East Alley, from M Manufacturing District to AR2 Apartment Residential District. The applicant is Station 324 LLC, care of agent Dave Perry. The proposed use is a multi-unit residential development. The City Department's recommendation is approval. Italian Village Commission's recommendation is also approval. If there are no questions or comments, I first move to waive the second reading.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Waived.
Thank you, and now I move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. The next ordinance is 2885-2019 to grant a variance from the provisions of sections 3312.27, parking setback line, 3333.18, building lines, 3333.255, perimeter yard of the Columbus City Codes for property located at 324 East 2nd Avenue to permit a multi-unit residential development with reduced development standards in the AR2 Apartment Residential District, and to repeal ordinance number 986-2018, passed April the 16th of 2018. The applicant is Station 324 LLC, care of agent Dave Perry. The proposed use is a multi-unit residential development. The city's department's recommendation is approval, and the Italian Village Commission's recommendation is approval. If there are no questions or comments, I move to waive second reading.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Waived.
Thank you, and now I move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. And the final ordinance in zoning this evening is ordinance number 2890-2019 to grant a variance from the provisions of sections 3332.037 R2F Residential District, 3356.03 C4 Permitted Uses, and 3312.03D Administrative Requirements of the Columbus City Codes for the property located at 2486 North High Street to permit a mixed-use development with reduced development standards in the C4 Commercial and the R2F Residential Districts. The applicant is Verge Developments LLC, care of attorney Donald Plank. The proposed use is a mixed-use development. The City Department's recommendation is approval, and the University Area Commission's recommendation is approval, 10-2. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, I will now move to waive second reading.
Please call the row.
Brown, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Waived.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
My bad.
And now I move for passage.
Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Pass.
And that concludes the zoning agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Meeting adjourned. We will reconvene as soon as our directors get here. So move. Please call the roll.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
We will now go to the Health and Human Services Committee. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Tyson. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The first ordinance I have is ordinance number 2796-2019, and I'm going to ask Teresa Woodard and all the members of the Highland Garden to walk towards the podium, please. And this ordinance is ordinance 2796 of 2019 to authorize the Board of Health to enter into a contract with the Highland Youth Garden to support capacity building and to authorize an appropriation within the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund and to declare an emergency. And I'm going to let you share information about the Highland Youth Garden and this and why this $20,000 is going to be so important to the garden.
Thank you, Councilmember Tyson. Good evening, Council President Harden and all other council members. Very excited to be in front of you tonight for this ordinance. Highland Youth Garden is a garden on the west side of Columbus that serves yearly around 500 youth. It's an educational program. We're really excited to be a year-round educational program serving two schools that are in the neighborhood, Highland Elementary and the Educational Academy for Boys and Girls. Over the past year, I would say we've had some exponential growth. We've added a preschool program. We have added a Green Teens program. So we provided, it was about a 16-week program for 5 pre-K classes. And then this summer, we employed 9 teenagers to be working in the garden. And we've also added 2 part-time staff members. So if you're counting, we're now employing 11 people, and we are employing 4 teens year-round. All of this so far has been done with volunteer leadership like myself. I am the board president at Highland Youth Garden in addition to other board responsibilities I have and a full-time job that I have. So in addition to this growth, we've added an after-school program, we've added community events, we've added being at the Westgate Farmers Market. It's become quite a lot for a small group of volunteers to do. And so we do what all good nonprofits do. We did a strategic plan for the past 2 years, and we create our BHAGs. And for those of you who don't read Jim Collins' Good to Great, it's our big, hairy, audacious goals. And we have 6 weeks to accomplish our 2019 BHAG of hiring an executive director for the garden. This position is critical for the west side of Columbus. As you know, the west side of Columbus is a food desert. There is no grocery store in this area. There are no other gardens that serve the youth in the way that we serve the youth and have educational programs year-round. We have also added Saturday programming. So in addition to everything we're doing with schools during the week, we are now doing year-round Saturday programming for youth and their families to come learn about the garden. So it's critical for this work to continue for us to hire an executive director, someone who is focused on the long-term sustainability of this garden. It's been a gem for 10 years on the west side of Columbus, and I would like to see it continue for the next 100 years on the west side of Columbus, but I probably won't be around to lead it for the next 100 years. So we are hoping to hire someone who will be able to lead this garden into the future and have sustainability.
Please introduce your guest.
Okay. My name is Beth Urban, and I am the board president. This is Teresa Woodard. You want to introduce? And your role?
Oh,
What do you do?
I am a volunteer board member, and I've been helping do a lot of the grant writing and fundraising.
And I'm Cheryl Banks, also board member, and I do live in the area on South Wheatland Avenue, so I have a personal perspective of how beneficial this garden is to the youth in my neighborhood. I've been there nearly 30 years, and this is a big step up in the area for the children, and it's reverberating beautifully through the community. We used to have a lot of non-acceptance. People didn't understand. some violence even against the garden, but that's all ironed out now, and I think it's becoming a part of the people who live in our community in a positive way.
Thank you. So again, this is to support their capacity building by them being able to hire an executive director for their program. And as Teresa mentioned, this garden has been 10 years of celebrating 10 years of exceptional educational gardening in the Hilltop. And it's also important just to mention that they provides food and opportunities for our young people, as they mentioned, but also the Highland Youth Garden supports the Columbus and Franklin County Local Food Action Plan by providing access to healthy food, affordable food, and local food, and creating opportunities, jobs for West Side teens, and using less energy and reducing waste. And they were our first inaugural Local Food Champion awardee. And so if there are no questions or comments, I would certainly like to pass legislation for them to receive $20,000 to continue to build this amazing organization for this community.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I saw all the other individuals that were here. They had to leave, but I tell them I saw them in chambers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your continued support of our work.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2813-2019. This is to authorize and direct the Board of Health to accept a grant from the Franklin County Public Health for the Franklin County Overdose Data to Action Project Grant in the amount of $148,000 and to authorize the appropriation of $148,000 to the Health Department and the Health Department's Grants Fund and to declare an emergency. Columbus Public Health has been awarded this grant from the Franklin County Public Health to support this overdose data to action plan. In April of 2019, the Franklin County Coroner's Office released preliminary data, overdose death statistics for 2018. Opioid-related deaths accounted for almost 92% of the overdose deaths in 2018. Fueling this was fentanyl, which accounted for 79% of all overdose deaths. In the same period in 2017, opiates accounted for 87.8%, and fentanyl accounted for 61%. So as you can see, the numbers are increasing. This grant will focus on building a prevention and education infrastructure that emphasizes service integration between physical health, emergency health care, and behavioral health care. The geographic area for this project is Franklin County. The population of focus is opioid prescribers, patients, and the caregivers of adolescents and adults with a diagnosis requiring opioid prescription and those at risk for misuse of opioids. And again, that is really important because there are individuals in this community who, because of an illness, have to take opioids or pain medication. And we need to make sure that we're educating everyone properly on how to how to prescribe that medication. For more information, if you are in this community and you want to know more about this program, for more information, please contact Mona Duffing-Arrington at Columbus Public Health at 614-645-2055. If there are no questions or comments, I move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. The next ordinance is ordinance number 2826-2019 to authorize and direct the Board of Health to accept grant funds from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $4,727,019 and any additional funds for the Ryan White Part A HIV Care Grant Program, and to authorize the appropriation of $4,727,019 for any additional funds from the unappropriated balance of the Health Department's Grants Fund, and to authorize the city auditor to transfer appropriations between object classes for the Ryan White Part A HIV Care Grant Program and to declare an emergency. This grant is to improve access to medical care for persons living with HIV or AIDS in Central Ohio. And in 2018, they served over 2,847 clients of unduplicated clients and they also provided case manager, early intervention, housing services, medical case management services, mental health services, and outpatient ambulatory care and emergency assistance. If there are no questions or comments, I move for passage.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. And the final ordinance in this committee this evening is ordinance number 2879-2019, to authorize and direct the Board of Health to accept a grant from the Ohio Department of Health for the Creating Healthy Communities Grant Program in the amount of $100,000, and to authorize the appropriation of $100,000 to the Health Department and the Health Department's Grants Fund, and to declare an emergency. This particular grant will utilize population-based strategies to address healthy eating, active living, and smoke-free living with the goal of reducing chronic diseases. We will be focusing on a few of our neighborhoods in Columbus: Linden, the South Side, and the West Side. We have found that only 54.4% of adult residents are eating less than one serving of fruit a day. 69.3% are eating less than one serving of vegetables per week, and that's according to the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. Lastly, 35.1% of residents within the priority communities are current smokers, compared to 22.7% in Franklin County. So Columbus Public Health will increase food access by continuing to plan and implement farmers markets in neighborhoods that do not have convenient access to healthy foods. Staff will implement the Ohio Healthy program, which provides technical assistance to child care centers to adopt policies and support healthy menu options for children served. And funding will also increase physical activity opportunities for residents through physical environment changes to support active transportation within neighborhoods, as well as assist with developing and implementing our Complete Streets program. If you have any questions or want to become a part of utilizing these services, please contact Katie Stone at columbus.gov 614, or KL at columbus.gov, or 614-645-3173. And that's all I have in my committee, and I ask for your approval.
Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy Tyson, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The final committee coming before council is the Small and Minority Business Committee. I chair that committee. And I have one ordinance, ordinance 2567-2019, is to authorize the Director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to modify an existing contract with Mason Tillman Associates Limited for conducting a post-disparity study implementation, and to authorize the transfer of $160,000 within the general fund, and to authorize the expenditure of $161,500 from the general fund, and to declare an emergency. Earlier this year, Council accepted the disparity study, which found statistically significant disparities between race and genders in our procurement process. This legislation is to craft the implementation plan to remedy those disparities. The post-disparity study work will define race and gender-conscious recommendations, as well as race and gender-neutral recommendations. The consultants will work with ODI to draft a minority and women business enterprise ordinance that embodies preferred program components and produces a program manual detailing procedures to implement the ordinance. The contract will guide and inform ODI's work to ensure fairness, equity, and inclusion in the city's procurement processes. With regard to the consultant, Mason Tillman Associates is a nationally recognized African-American-owned consulting firm that has conducted more than 134 disparity studies, which represent roughly 30% of the studies completed since the landmark Croson case was decided in January 23rd of 1989. This legislation does not enact a policy change. It simply ensures that the Office of Diversity and Inclusion has the consultant support to engage the community, leveraging the consultant's national expertise to put forward the best policy possible for the city of Columbus. I'd just like to note that my small and minority business budget hearing will be held on December 17th at 5:30 p.m. If you are interested in discussing this disparity study more and its implementation, I encourage you to come out and participate with us, and mark your calendar. We will be sending out more information about that public hearing very shortly. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage. Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Passed. Seeing no further business come before council, may I have a motion to adjourn? Please call the row.
Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, Tyson, President Harden.
Meeting is adjourned.